Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's Fiber Broadband Association webinar. Today's webinar, how private-public partnerships can help bridge the digital divide. And this is presented by GEOGRAPH Technologies. I'm David Norris, webinar producer here at FBA. Before we get started, I've just got a couple quick housekeeping items to make sure you have the best experience. So first, everybody on today is in listen-only mode. However, we do encourage you to ask questions. You can do that using the questions tool in the control panel on the side of your screen. And this is also being recorded and will be available within 24 to 48 hours through the FBA website. So please check out the recording as well. And with that, I just want to go ahead and introduce, we've got with us today Bruce Smith from GeoGraph. And today we're going to be discussing how, in an effort to bridge that digital divide, we've seen a lot of unexpected players enter the fiber broadband market. And so partnerships between traditional broadband providers and electric distribution companies have been on the rise over the past decade. And so, as I mentioned, today we're joined by Bruce Smith. He is the CEO and co-founder of GeoGraph Technologies, a fiber mapping software supplier. Bruce will share details about the partnership between ACE, an electric cooperative in Corinth, Mississippi, and New Albany Gas, Water, and Light, a municipal utility based in New Albany, Mississippi, and how that partnership helped them to provide quality broadband services to over 10,000 Mississippi residents. Bruce is co-founder and CEO of GeoGraph, as I mentioned, and began his telecommunications career over 25 years ago building copper and fiber networks. He has overseen the construction of more than 10,000 miles of fiber optic networks, fiber optic cable, and has designed, engineered, and managed project and installations throughout the United States. Since June of 2018, Bruce has been at the helm of GeoGraph and has worked to establish a world-class fiber mapping software organization focused on customer success. GeoGraph supports over 160 customers in 38 of the United States and in Canada, the British Virgin Islands, Bermuda, Guam, and Guyana. Bruce will recount and share clips from his interview with ACE CEO Sean McGrath. Sean McGrath is CEO of Alcorn County Electric Power Association, ACE Power, and its broadband subsidiary, ACE Fiber, both located in Corinth, Mississippi. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to Bruce to get us started. So Bruce, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, David. Appreciate that. Welcome, everyone. And again, I'm Bruce Smith here at GeoGraph, CEO and co-founder. I began my career over 26 years ago, as David said, working as a telecommunications engineering consultant. I've served in all facets and roles within that industry, and just happy to be here today to share a little bit about the story with Sean and the folks at New Albany. It's going to be a little different. Sean is going to be involved in this webinar, but he is going to be joining us through a pre-recorded interview that we did. So there's going to be some transitions between my explaining of the project and the teams and what's going on there, and then Sean's responses to that. So I appreciate your patience through those transitions, and thank you for your time to join us today. So who is GeoGraph? So GeoGraph began in 2018. We're based in Easley, South Carolina, and we primarily focus, our core business is around GIS fiber mapping. So we are a gold partner of Esri. We do have an extension and an add-in for Pro that maps and manages your fiber network down to the strand and port level. We serve as also as GIS consultants and telecommunication industry experts within the GIS field. So not only are we providing a world-class software to help you map and manage your fiber networks, we also get involved with things like data convergence, moving you from one platform to another, or maybe taking your existing legacy records and building them into a GIS record system, and all of the services that go along with that, as well as providing those consulting operations around the mapping software and telecommunications. And that's really how we got involved with ACE. Was they were a partner of ours. They bought our software. We've been working with them several years, and then they reached out to us as well when they started investigating this project at New Albany. So happy to be a part of this team with ACE. So Sean, met Sean again through ACE when we began this project and began working with them several years ago. Sean's a great guy. He's served in a lot of different roles and spent a lot of time at ACE, and happy to have his input on this project. It's an interesting part of what's going on in the industry. So we hear a lot of buzz about completing and finishing the digital divide. As you guys know, the U.S. stands right now at about 50% coverage of our households with fiber. And so a lot of players are involved in expanding and completing that coverage to make sure that we have 90 to 100% household coverage with broadband and fiber optics over the next few years. And again, a lot of the big players in this are the electric cooperatives that are getting into this field to provide fiber broadband and to become a broadband network provider for their territory and for their customers. Again, ACE serves about 19,000 customers in Alcorn County, and through relationships have built this partnership with New Albany that we're going to be discussing today. So a little bit about the project details. Again, we talk about ACE Power. ACE Power is a subsidiary called ACE Fiber that provides their fiber broadband services and who will actually be providing the services at New Albany Gas, Light, and Water. And a little bit about the project itself. New Albany will be the plant owner, so they will own the assets, which is the fiber optic cables, the splicing, the connections. They will own the asset. ACE Fiber will own the services that go on that. So they're going to have a long-term lease involved with New Albany to provide the network services. So that partnership is more long-term services offering to the customers of New Albany through this. And it's an interesting project. It's just now getting off the ground. We don't even have a single customer hooked up, but it's very interesting how this process has gone. It's been very unique considering all of the projects I've worked on in my career, is why we wanted to take this time to share it with you today. So who are the teams working on this? So there is a big team. Atwell and Gent, this is Jeff Atwell, and Mississippi. They were the engineering and project managers for New Albany Gas, Light, and Water. And they were actually the ones that reached out to us about bringing in the high-level network planning design utilizing GIS. We were referred to them by ACE because we were a customer of ACE and knew the folks, Jason, Sean, all the folks at ACE, and they were recommended to us to talk to us about helping with the high-level planning. So as part of this, GEOGRAPH serves as the GIS and network planning portion. So we're providing the access to the GIS maps to see the design, to see the project as it unfolds. We're also doing the planning, so planning where the splitters go, planning where the cables are, planning where the MSTs, what the size of the MST. We're doing all the high-level planning. Then BBG is actually involved in the low-level field design. So they're coming in, they're measuring the poles with LiDAR, they're building the construction prints, the permits, and actually building the low-level construction design. And then ACE Fiber comes in as the network operator alongside with New Albany Electric as the network owner. So how did ACE Power really get into fiber? So ACE was a power cooperative for 90 plus years. And they were approached by the Mississippi Broadband Office and asked if they would be interested in providing fiber broadband to the area. They were looking again at closing this digital divide. There was a lot of financial aspects involved in this, and they were asked if they would take on this project. The decision was tough for Sean and the team. They really sat down, put together, looked at the business plan and the business model, and ultimately what they decided was if they did this, they would be able to diversify their revenue. So one of the things that Sean talks about is their mission to keep their electric rates affordable for their customers. And they looked at this as an opportunity to achieve that mission. By diversifying their revenue, it also put them into a more competitive market versus where the electric cooperative historically stays. So that historically, electric cooperatives kind of capitalize and monopolize the market in their territory. There's not a lot of competition for power other than generators or solar. Getting into broadband, there is competition, and there's increased competition. So you do have to go and market. You have to really connect with those customers. So not only did it diversify their revenue, it allowed them to connect with their customer base again on really a whole different level. they weren't just the power company waiting for people to come in. Now they had to go and solicit new business for their fiber broadband. So it really helped them change the mind of how they interact with their community, how they interact with their customers, and how they take all of that to focus on their mission. The results of the project, I asked John, I said, do you think this project's been successful? And he said, wildly successful. Their business plan had anticipated getting a 50% take rate in 20 years. So take the economic life of the fiber over 20 years, and their goal was to have that a 50% take rate within the economic life of the fiber. They were able to achieve that 50% take rate within the first 4 years, and they're growing at an astronomical rate each year above that. And so he, in his own words, said that this project was wildly successful. So let's take a minute and hear Sean explain how Ace Fiber actually got into the fiber broadband network business.
To about 2017, when we, myself as well as Jason, our COO, and our CEO at the time, Eddie Howard, got a visit from the Northern District's Public Service Commissioner in Mississippi, Brandon Presley, who came to us with the pitching the idea of rural broadband. And we left that meeting, and I looked at my boss, Eddie, and said, Eddie, have you ever been satisfied with your ISP? And he said no. And I said, why in the world do we want to get into business? You know, two years later, the legislature in Mississippi saw the need to expand rural broadband in Mississippi, saw that we were, you know, at the time about 46th in the country in broadband connectivity. And so in January of 2019, when the Mississippi legislature passed the Broadband Enabling Act, we decided right then that we were going to start putting a plan together to order some feasibility studies, see if it was feasible for us to even get in the business. We did. We ordered 3 independent feasibility studies. They all came back, and then we did our own feasibility study, which we turned into a business plan. Mm-hmm. And we thought, you know, this is actually a good way to diversify our revenue stream for the electric co-op. You know, as an electric cooperative, our mission is to provide affordable, reliable electricity. So the first piece of that's affordability, and what better way to help keep rates low than to diversify our revenue stream and bring in additional sources of revenue. Yeah, that was my CFO glasses that I was looking at that and approaching that business plan with, but that's still the goal today. And that's really why we decided to get in the business. A, we needed to diversify our revenue. B, we found that the projects were going to be feasible for us to do. And then C, we thought it was a great economic development tool for our county and our region to provide, you know, affordable, reliable broadband for our members. So now let's talk about ACE and New Albany and this partnership and how it evolved. When I asked Sean how they really got involved with New Albany, because ACE is not contingent to New Albany. They're actually an hour away. And so it wasn't something that they had worked with these guys a lot. They knew a lot about them, but it all boiled down to a personal relationship. Sean tells an interesting story about a guy he played baseball with in college is actually the one that initiated the conversation. But what was happening was New Albany was looking at a way to help their customers, their community, with better broadband services. The incumbent service there was just not doing a good job. The customer service, the quality of service was just not what New Albany wanted for their community. And so they started reaching out to folks around them to ask if they would be willing to do this partnership. And through that relationship that Sean had, ACE was able to get involved. They quickly put together a business plan. They looked at, again, the ability to continue to support their mission to provide affordable rates to their customers. And so the mission was not to go out and be a broadband network provider. Their core mission is to provide affordable electric rates for their customers. And by further diversifying their revenue, further broadening their customer base with this competitive deregulated service, they were able to continue to support that mission.
again, they were able to go and almost double their customer base by looking at this project with New Albany. And so let's hear Sean talk a little bit about how this partnership evolved and how ACE and New Albany got together.
An interesting story, and it does come back to relationships. Andy Dillard, who works at New Albany Light, Gas, and Water and manages their business office, he and I had an existing relationship through baseball, of all things. We both played baseball at a university called Delta State, so we had a lot of commonalities there. We had a lot of friends in common. And then he went to work for our electric billing service provider, CSA, for several years, and he and I got to know each other well there. And so Andy kind of leveraged that existing relationship he had with us, with me and Ace. And at the time, and it still is this way, municipal systems in Mississippi can't operate a broadband service provider, and co-ops can. You know, the Broadband Enabling Act in 2019 enables co-ops to operate as a broadband service provider, but it didn't afford that opportunity to municipalities. But what New Albany was had really a lot of foresight to do was say, hey, you know, we're planning on building a fiber infrastructure to connect our electric assets for communications purposes, for smart grid applications and things of that nature. And maybe if we build this network out, we can lease out excess capacity to one of these cooperatives that are kind of around us. And we're not contiguous with New Albany, so we wouldn't have been the first choice. But I think they had reached out to a couple others, and they were all interested. But then they reached out to us, and we actually kind of did what we did here. We developed a business plan within a couple of weeks, and we said, hey, this is just another way to diversify our revenue stream, to be able to take our fixed costs that we've got on our network here in Alcorn County, spread those same fixed costs out to more subscribers in the New Albany footprint, bring our costs down, and hopefully bring back some revenue, with the end goal of this, you know, same thing it is here in Alcorn County, to keep our electric rates low, because Ace Power is the sole member of First Light Fiber LLC, which is the subsidiary that does business as Ace Fiber. And being the sole member, you know, we take in all the profits, and we use that to keep electric rates low, to expand our operations here in Alcorn County, and use those for capital expenditures and things of that nature. So when we did a business plan for New Albany, it just made a lot of sense to us. It was just a matter of, can we negotiate a contract with them that's long term, that has both of our mutual interests in mind, that doesn't penalize either one of us for anything, that is just mutually beneficial to both of us. And I'll tell you, from day one, those relationships with New Albany have been great. They are a great group to work with. You know that, having worked with them as well. But we all had the same goal in mind, which was, you know, we can provide these same great services that we're providing in Alcorn County, and extend that great network out to the New Albany footprint, and help those customers out. In turn, it helps out, you know, customers in Alcorn County, and really our region just benefits greatly from that relationship. So it's just been one of those things that, I mean, you can't make up the story. It just, everything fell into place, and it's just been a very good thing so far.
So with every project, there's always challenges. You can't expect that there be just seamless synergies with everything, and everything go off without a hook. So I talked to Sean a little bit about what challenges did they face when working with a public entity such as New Albany. One of the things Sean mentioned is the speed at which decisions get made. So Ace, when they decided to go into the fiber business, they were able to sit down, put a business plan, meet as a team, make that decision, and go forward. It's not so easy when you're dealing with a public entity like a municipality. You have certain laws that you have to abide by. You have things like going through council readings. Certain things have to be approved. Then there has to be acceptance by the community. So there's much more regulation in dealing with getting decisions made to get this project off the ground. So that was one of the big core challenges that they dealt with. Another one was logistics. As I mentioned earlier, ACE headquarters is about an hour away from New Albany. So that means not only taking your core team, you're going to have to expand your team, because now you're putting your team on the road 1 to 2 hours of travel time a day to service a network that's a good ways away from their home. Warehousing for materials, trucks, being able to roll trucks and to handle troubles and outages in a very efficient manner means that you have to really think about your logistics and how you handle your staff, how you expand your staff, train your staff, and be able to handle projects like that. And then lastly, we talk about the local laws governing municipals. So Sean talks about the laws that allowed electric cooperatives to get into the broadband network through the Fair Network Operations law a few years back. And he talks about that allowed others to get in the network, but it did not allow municipals to get into the network. So you have all these core pockets of these small towns, a lot of times, maybe 5,000 to 10,000 residents, who are served by a local incumbent that may be headquartered out of a major city somewhere. They have 1 or 2 workforces. They're really not focused on investing and supporting these small markets. But the municipals who are there, who have the relationship with the community, are looking at ways to help their community to expand their viability, to bring in broadband, to bring in industry. We all see the importance of having viable network, fiber connected broadband activity within these communities to not only further education, to do more online classes, to give access to their communities to higher education. There's so much value in having these networks that these communities are seeing, but the law prevents them from doing it themselves. So they're looking for partners. They're looking for opportunities for people to come in and help them do that. So let's hear Sean talk a little bit about the challenges of the project.
Bring up a good point. Operationally, the challenge is being non-contiguous to New Albany and being an hour away from our footprint here. We have to spin up operations in a new market that we weren't necessarily familiar with. Mm-hmm. Warehousing, main office, we want to be sure that we have, a place that customers can go and look at us one-on-one and face-to-face and have a conversation with us when they have the need to. So that's been a challenge in and of itself. I think the other big challenge that we've seen over the last year and a half is where co-ops are able to move a little quicker because, we're non-governmental entities. Municipal systems are governmental entities and are bound by certain procurement laws and regulations. And so that whole process is a little slower, where we can put out, an RFP for quotes and then move on that RFP rather rapidly. Right. Municipal systems are kind of bound to move a little bit slower in that space, and so that's been a little bit of a challenge for us because we're ready to move, and we kind of have to put the brakes on a little bit and wait for things to play out as far as those regulatory requirements are concerned.
So with every project and ACE's initial launch into the fiber broadband and then expanding into the partnership with New Albany, Sean talks about a lot of the lessons learned. One of the things he talked about, and is really important, especially coming from my engineering mindset, is focusing on the core network. So many times people go into these projects to where they're launching a fiber network, they're expanding into a territory, they may be overbuilding a legacy network, and the first thing they want to do is go to the most affluent community in the area and just start building fiber. And what they forget is your core network has to serve your entire territory, the entire planned project. Lacking on focus of the core network can really come back to bite you. You can go out and spend a lot of money, you can put a lot of plant in the ground, you can pass a lot of homes, but if you don't have your core network strong, You may not have that redundancy to keep the network viable. You may not have that reliability. You may not even be able to put light on the distribution fiber that you're putting out in front of these houses. So really focusing on the core network was something that they learned through not only their initial launch, but now going into this partnership with New Albany. One of the core things we're doing is really focusing on building the routes that contain the core network to connect all the OLTs, to connect to the ISP interconnects on the outside world. We're really focusing on that in the first phase of construction, which is something they did not do initially in their launch. So that was one of the big lessons they learned as far as how to build and how to launch the network. They're also now dealing with some mature network components. When they launched with Adtran's XGS-PON technology, which was very new, and they kind of learned together how to implement and adapt and repair these services as they were implementing them in their initial implementation. Now that network is more mature. They know the equipment they need. They know where they need the equipment. They know when to order it, to have it on hand, so there are not any delays, and having that network viability really robust and reliable for the folks in New Albany. Another lesson learned is get ahead with design and planning. So many times people do not want to spend the money on design and planning. They just want to go out and they start building. Everybody can count houses and everybody knows the sizes of fibers, and they think they can go and lay a network out. Really spend time on designing and planning, because again, that falls back into knowing where your core network needs to be, how that core network needs to be tied together, and how to build that reliability to have that service. So as soon as you start turning ground and start splicing fiber, you can start connecting customers and start getting return on that revenue. So spend some time upfront doing your design and planning, focus on your core network, understand your material orders, your vendors, your logistics involved in that. And then we talked about, is this something ACE is going to look at doing more of? Are they going to expand into other territories? Sean's exact words are, I'm never going to say never. There are areas that he keeps an eye on, that they're looking at, and if the right opportunity presents itself, they may venture into this again. But really what's important to them is supporting their mission, finding good folks to work with, and making sure that those synergies are there for all of them. So let's hear a little bit about Sean talking about the lessons learned of not only their initial launch, but moving into this project with New Albany.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we really have been able to take from what we learned here is, it really starts with your core network. So we've really put a large focus on building a stronger core network in New Albany right out of the gate versus, we had to piece things together pretty quickly here. Now we've got a really strong core, but it took us a couple years to get to that point. Whereas in New Albany, that's the foundation for everything. Mm-hmm. I think we're able to consult with New Albany on the design, and I think you've seen that, those efforts portrayed in our mm-hmm. team calls that we've got, right. With you guys, and provide our input as far as how the network needs to be designed. Whereas, here in Alcorn County, we didn't know necessarily how to build a network right out of the gate. We were right. at 100% of the mercy of our consultants, and consultants who at the time didn't really know our area, mm-hmm. and didn't know how really our electric infrastructure was constructed. We've been able to take some time and really study how New Albany's electric infrastructure is, and how that fiber infrastructure needed to be built. Mm-hmm. Just simple things like, limiting the length on an MST tail. Right. Where we have some that are 1,500 feet here, that could be a long distance. Mm-hmm. Let's minimize that. Let's drop it down to 1,000 feet, 1,200 feet, mm-hmm. and minimize the maintenance expense that we're going to have on those MST tails, because MST tails and service drops are the weakest part of your fiber network, and mm-hmm. We'll have the ability to strengthen that in New Albany. So we've learned a valuable lesson there.
So just to close and kind of wrap all this up, some of the things we want you guys to take away from this webinar is, if you are planning on partnering with a municipal or really any entity, or you're looking at going into a new market, take time to plan. So many people want to jump in, start building cable, and start getting revenue. Take time to plan to make sure you can build that cable in a way to get your revenue quickly, to keep those customers happy, to make sure your core network is reliable and redundant, and make sure that that planning is there. It can be done. It can be done very quickly and efficiently, but make sure you've got time to plan for that. Again, focus first on a strong, redundant core network. Don't just start going and passing houses. Make sure that those houses can be lit, make sure those houses can be redundant, and make sure that there is reliability built into your network before you start offering services. And then if you are going to partner, especially with municipals in a public entity, make sure your core missions align. If you're going at this from two different directions and your vectors are pulling against each other on your core missions, the project is not going to be successful. Make sure the mission aligns, and then make sure you have those things in place to begin with, and that you talk about them and communicate them as you're developing these partnerships. So let's hear Sean kind of wrap things up and talk about finishing the project.
I think the key piece of advice is to just as I just mentioned, find the right project that fits your cooperative. Find a project that stays with your mission, and our mission is to provide affordable, reliable rates for electricity and for fiber as well. But find a partner that fits what you do, and I think that's the key.
Yeah. All right, with that, appreciate your time. We're going to open it up to any questions. David, I'm going to welcome you back in and see if there's any questions we can answer. And again, thank you again for your time today.
Well, thank you, Bruce. We certainly appreciate it. And we do have some questions that came in.
Sure.
Let's go ahead and we'll start here. So somebody's asking, they say it looks like there's quite a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes when it comes to providing internet service, and it's something that I might say many take for granted. Do you believe that the new customers have a different perspective since they have internet service where they didn't have it before? I think that's a...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anyone who remembers probably 10 or 15 years ago and the squealing sound from a dial-up internet, or even just a few years ago to DSL, being able to have access to a robust fiber broadband network just opens the world up. I think if COVID taught us anything, it taught us that we're very lacking in our network connectivity in a lot of areas of this country. Things that really set us back when we all had to go home was the ability to further our education and teach our children. My wife is a teacher, and one of the things that the school district did during COVID was quickly distribute Wi-Fi boxes, because they found out there was 40 to 50% of their students that did not have internet access. And so they actually fit the bill with a wireless provider to send Wi-Fi boxes to these houses so these students could continue to learn. Being able to have affordable access to broadband just opens up the world again. So many college programs now have online classes. So these middle to low income families that may be in these municipals in these very rural areas may not have the opportunity to go to high quality colleges and universities. They're relying a lot on the tech and trade schools, and that's great. But what having the broadband does is now open up that world to them, and opens up the opportunity to further their education, to get advanced degrees. Many master's programs are now fully online, and so just really having that accessibility to communicate. We communicate through Zoom meetings. We meet with people all over the world instantaneously. It just really expands our variety and our exposure to everything in the world when we have that. So I think, yes, anybody that can say that knows that, maybe if you're 15 years old and younger, you don't realize that. But, if you're 15 years and older, you know how difficult it was to communicate and to do things without reliable internet just a very short time ago. So.
Well, I certainly can relate. Actually, when we moved into a new house and in a slightly rural neighborhood, we were limited to DSL, and this was maybe 5 years ago. And
Right.
I'll get some fiber in here, but boy, it touches every aspect of your life, obviously.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I love hearing about the school district, by the way, providing the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Students. That's amazing. So moving on here, it says, has this project inspired you to think about other public and private partnerships going forward?
Yeah, again, as we talked to Sean, he's never going to say never. And I think one of the key things I would like for everyone to take away from this is, if you are a municipal looking for a partner, start reaching out. These electric cooperatives are looking to diversify their revenue. They're looking to support their missions. And they don't have to be contingent to you, contingent to your area. They can be, elsewhere. As long as you're finding that core partnership, I think both entities, not only the operators who are currently operating networks, but those who are desiring networks, start networking, start reaching out. Find good consultants, good engineers that have relationships with a lot of folks in your area, and start building those relationships. Because again, without a chance relationship, ACE may have never even gotten involved with New Albany. But this has been a successful project for both of them. Will continue to be a successful project, and will bring tremendous value to the community and the citizens of New Albany.
Right, and I loved how you shared too, just how it changed the relationship that they had with their customers as well, given the difference of providing, broadband power.
Yeah.
So thinking back to when you were beginning the partnership, can you share some of the details related to how the project team was selected?
Yeah, so again, it's through referrals and relationships, right? Jeff Atwell Jeff and Dan at Atwell and Gent had the relationship with New Albany. They were their electric engineers. They did not have experience in fiber, but they had the relationship with New Albany. And so working with Atwell and Gent, the partnership with ACE and New Albany, they kind of filtered into Atwell and Gent. They said, hey, we use this group GEOGRAPH. They're fiber experts. We've got their mapping platform. I know they do network planning. Perhaps you could reach out to them. So Jeff reached out to me about the design and planning. We kind of started from there. And from their previous experience with BBG, for the fielding and the quality of permitting and design prints and things like that, they kind of put the team together. And so it really just all evolved into relationships again. And I hate to keep reiterating that, but this is one reason we don't respond to a lot of RFPs. When we get an RFP out, there's just no relationship there, and there's just a bunch of boxes to check, and it's a lot of time invested in doing something. And so I've grown up in the rural world, consulting, cooperative consulting, and everything we do is so relationship based. It's always key to make sure you have core synergies, you can work together, and to do that when you're starting to build these partnerships and putting teams together.
Excellent. This is a great question that we received. So somebody wants to know about the risk, revenue, and ownership decisions that come from when you're bringing a public sector and private partnership together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I talked to Sean about this. I don't think we had it in the video of a little bit about were there any concerns that New Albany may open up their network to others, to other competitors. And that was one of the things that Sean, really stressed early on, is we want a long-term exclusive partnership with you guys. I've done probably I've been involved in about 6 of these different projects with entities partnering with other entities. And I've seen financial mixes from 50-50 partnership shares. They both create a subsidiary and 50% share of the cost, 50% share of the revenue, and they move on. I've seen ones where the operator, the owner, the plant owner, is putting the majority of the capital up front to build the plant, and the network operator is going to have kind of the long tail of cost being able to support the customer. And so early revenue, so the first customer basis, as revenue starts coming in, maybe 80 to 90% of that revenue goes back to the owner, to the network owner, till they recoup their capital cost. And then it starts kind of de-escalating to where the revenue majority goes to the operator on the long tail. And so what it does is allows the owner to come in, recoup their cost of building the plant, recoup that capital cost, but then get a long tail, smaller revenue, and then the network operator gets kind of the long tail revenue and the more revenue because they're the ones having to travel to keep customers hooked up, to changing electronics, things like that. And so there's a lot of different varieties, but yeah, going into that and making sure those I's are dotted and T's are crossed before you do this is very important, because you do want to minimize that risk of putting a big investment in only to allow other competitors to come in and do the same thing behind you after the hard part is done.
Well, you certainly just covered this, but do you have any other advice that you would give in regards to structuring an agreement for a county partnership?
Yeah, it's really finding one that works best for both parties. I think the way ACE and New Albany is doing this is a great way, because there is opportunity to ever end if the partnership does dissolve. You're basically, it's not a joint venture, it's not a joint partnership, it's a long-term exclusivity lease. And so New Albany is footing the bill for the capital investment, so building the plant. They were able to get, or I think going after a lot of grant money to offset that. And so they pretty much have 100% control of the plant, and then they are giving I think it's like a 20-year exclusivity lease to New Albany as Ace Fiber is their single customer. So New Albany is leasing the plant to Ace Fiber as their singular customer. So it really works best for both parties. New Albany gets that long-term commitment of that financial return on the lease, and Ace has that long-term commitment of exclusivity with non-compete. And I really think that's a good way to do it. It's very clean, it's very straightforward, and I really like the way they've done that. Again, we've seen these 50-50 joint venture partnerships, and we've seen this escalating to de-escalating kind of reversal of revenue sharing, based on the two entities. But I really like the way ACE is doing this with the long-term exclusivity lease.
So let's see here. What is the greatest challenge you've faced when branching into a new stream of revenue? I guess that's really a question for Sean, but.
Yeah, that is. And we did talk about that, and I can answer that for Sean. When I asked him that, he kind of laughed. He said, we've been an electric cooperative for 90+ years. We thought we were good at customer service. We thought we were good at sales and marketing. He said, but when you get into broadband network, he said, there's FCC reporting, there's guidelines that you have to report. You have to market better, because now you're going after a market. You don't have a captured market. And he said it really challenged us to be better at what we thought we were already good at. And so learning the regulations, learning the reporting strategies, learning the financial aspects of it was one of the biggest challenges for him. But it was something that was completely different. Again, they went into it saying, we know how to serve customers, we know networks, we know facilities, and they really got spun on top of their head, because it is a very completely different type utility.
But it sounds like they found great success with it in spite of this challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've got one more question here, and then we should probably wrap it. But somebody's asking what your expectations are in terms of how this will affect municipal employees, and they give firefighters as an example.
Yeah, so municipal employees, I think, there's probably different parts that it's going to affect different ways. So the fire, the police, the EMS, they're going to have a tremendous value in this, right? Because now they have reliability, they're getting communicated to quicker, they have access to GIS mapping. There's so much technology involved in communications with municipal partners like that. The libraries, the schools, all of the municipal buildings and what they call key institutions are now going to be able to have that robust, reliable communication network tied to them. So they're going to benefit. Now, you go to the flip side of that into the operations and maintenance, and now you take guys who have historically worked on electric lines that are now going to be working on fiber lines. There's going to be some learning curves in that. They're probably going to have to add more specialized staff and find people, you know, from these schools. Like there's a telecom school, I think in Sanford, North Carolina, who are teaching linemen how to climb poles and splice fibers, you know, do things like that. And so, you know, as we're closing this digital divide and as more people who are non-communication operators are getting into the business, there is becoming a bigger emphasis from the tech and trade schools on training people how to work with these type of networks. So I think you're probably going to see a split of how it's going to affect the employees. There's going to be a lot of them that say, hey, this is the greatest thing ever. And there's going to be a lot of them who are wringing their hands saying, oh, I didn't know I was going to have to splice fiber. And you know, so it's going to be interesting to see though, for sure.
But those new skills certainly will be able to help those employees as well.
Absolutely.
For those who embrace it. So again, Bruce, I just want to thank you again for this. This was terrific. And I want to thank everybody who has joined us here today. But we're just about out of time. And so I'll just wrap up by reminding people that we do have our regional Fiber Connect workshops that are in full swing right now. The next one that we have coming up here is on June 4th in Deer Valley, Utah. So if you're in that area, we encourage you to register and join. And if you haven't already, take a look at our calendar. We have our big Fiber Connect conference coming up in 2024 here. That is going to happen at the end of July in Nashville, and registration is open for that as well. So take a look at that. And of course, we want to encourage you to watch more of these webinars and also join our weekly webinar and podcast, Fiber for Breakfast, with our CEO and President, Gary Bolton, who hosts that every week. And with that, we will just wrap things up. I want to thank Bruce once again and thank GEOGRAPH for sponsoring this webinar. We really appreciate the information and we look forward to seeing everybody next time. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. Take care.